The security guard, who shoved the old beggar out the door, had no idea he just assaulted a man worth $3 billion. Let me tell you about what happened in Miami 2 years ago. This story is absolutely wild. So there's this guy named Richard Chen. Richard built a massive tech company from nothing over 30 years. He sold it when he was 65 and became a billionaire overnight. But here's the thing about Richard. He never forgot where he came from. His family came to America with nothing when he was a kid. They struggled 4 years before things got better. Richard always said that luck and timing played a huge role for his success. He believed he could have easily ended up on the streets if things had gone differently. After he retired, Richard started thinking about how people treat those who have nothing. He wondered if anyone would help someone in need without expecting anything in return. So he came up with a test. Richard decided to dress as a homeless beggar and see how people would treat him. He wanted to visit businesses, restaurants, and stores around Miami. His plan was to find people and companies that showed real compassion. Then he would reward them in ways that would change their lives. Richard put on old torn clothes and didn't shower 4 days. He messed up his hair and rubbed dirt on his face. He looked like he had been living on the streets 4 months. His own kids wouldn't have recognized him. On a hot Saturday afternoon, Richard started his test at a luxury car dealership. He walked in slowly, pretending to be confused and lost. The salespeople immediately surrounded him, but not to help. They demanded he leave right away. One salesman grabbed his arm roughly and dragged him toward the door. Another called him disgusting and said he was driving away real customers. The manager came out and threatened to call the police. Richard left quietly and made notes about the dealership. Next, he went to an upscale restaurant called the Palace. He stood outside and asked people for spare change. Most people walked right past him without making eye contact. A few people actually insulted him and told him to get a job. One woman sprayed perfume in his direction and said he smelled terrible. Richard tried to enter the restaurant to ask for water. The hostess blocked the door and called security. A large security guard came and physically shoved Richard out onto the sidewalk. Richard fell and scraped his hands. The guard told him if he came back, he would call the cops. Customers inside were watching and laughing. Some were taking videos on their phones. Nobody helped Richard get up. He sat there on the ground for several minutes. Finally, he got up and walked away. Richard visited a high-end clothing store next. The moment he walked in, alarms seemed to go off in everyone's heads. Sales associates followed him around like he was going to steal something. The manager came up and told him they had nothing in his price range. She said he needed to leave before she called more security. Richard asked if he could just look around. The manager raised her voice and said, "Absolutely not." Other customers were staring and whispering. Richard felt genuine shame, even though he knew it was just a test. He left and sat on a bench outside the store. That's when something different happened. A young employee from the store came running out. Her name was Sophia, and she was 19 years old. She had seen everything that happened inside. Sophia brought Richard a bottle of water and a sandwich from her lunch. She sat down next to him and talked to him. He was a real person. She didn't ask for anything or lecture him. She just showed him kindness. Sophia told him about a shelter nearby where he could get a hot meal and a bed. She even offered to walk him there after her shift ended. Richard was shocked. This young woman making minimum wage was the first person all day to treat him with dignity. He thanked her and said he would be okay. Sophia made him promise to go to the shelter. Then she went back to work. Richard sat there and cried, not because people had been cruel, but because this one person had been kind. Richard continued his test for 2 more weeks. He visited over 50 businesses around Miami. Most places treated him terribly, but there were a few exceptions. A small family restaurant let him sit inside and gave him free food. A barbershop owner cut his hair for free and didn't make him feel bad about it. A hotel clerk let him use the bathroom. and didn't call security. Richard documented everyone who showed him kindness. After 2 weeks, Richard cleaned up and became himself again. He had his lawyers start making calls. First, he went back to that luxury car dealership. Richard bought the entire dealership from the owner. Then he fired the manager and the salesman who had dragged him out. He didn't tell them why. He just said their services were no longer needed. Next, he visited the Palace restaurant. Richard met with the owner and made an offer to buy the property the restaurant was on. The owner was struggling with the lease and quickly agreed. Richard tripled the rent and gave them 30 days to relocate. The restaurant couldn't afford it and had to shut down. The security guard who pushed him lost his job. Richard went to the high-end clothing store. He bought out their lease too and forced them to close that location. But then came the good part. Richard found Sophia, the young woman who had helped him. He showed up at her apartment with his lawyers. Sophia was terrified at first. She thought she was in trouble. Richard explained everything. He told her about the test and how she was the only employee at that store who showed him humanity. Then he handed her a check for $200,000. Sophia started crying. She was putting herself through college and could barely afford rent. This money changed everything for her. But Richard wasn't done. He also offered her a full scholarship to finish her degree. And he gave her a job for one of his companies with a salary of $80,000 a year. She could start after graduation. Sophia couldn't believe it was real. Richard did similar things for everyone who had helped him. The family restaurant received a $100,000 grant. The barbershop owner got $50,000 and free business consulting. The hotel clerk received a check for $75,000. Richard's test made national news. People debated whether what he did was right or wrong. Some said he was wrong to trick people. Others said he exposed the truth about how society treats the poor. Richard didn't care about the controversy. He said the test showed him exactly what he needed to know. Most people only respect you if you have money or status. But a few people treat everyone with dignity, regardless of circumstances. Those are the people worth investing in. Sophia graduated college debt-free and now works as a director for one of Richard's companies. She still volunteers at homeless shelters every weekend. The businesses that failed learned an expensive lesson about compassion. And Richard continues to do random tests like this in different cities. He believes that kindness should be rewarded and cruelty should have consequences. The crazy thing is you never know who you're really talking to. That beggar asking for change might be testing you. That homeless person outside your business might be watching how you treat people. Kindness costs nothing, but can be worth everything. That's what Richard proved. And that's a lesson we should all remember.